When I liberate myself, I liberate others. If you don't speak out, ain't nobody gonna speak out for you. Fannie Lou Townsend, as was her maiden name, was born October 6, 1917 in Montgomery County, Mississippi. She was born to Ella and James Lee Townsend and was the youngest of 20 children. Starting at the age of 6, Fannie Lou picked cotton with her family. She attended school in a one-room schoolhouse on the plantation from 1924 to 1930, at which time she had to drop out to help support her family. Although she dropped out, she was illiterate and was selected as the plantation's time and record keeper. In 1945, she married Perry Pap Hamer. While having surgery in 1961 to remove a tumor, Hamer, at the age of 47, was also given a hysterectomy without her consent by a white doctor. This was part of the state of Mississippi's plan to reduce the number of poor blacks in the state. She was also credited with coining the phrase Mississippi appendectomy as a euphemism for the involuntary and uninformed sterilization of black women that was common in the South in the 1960s. She attended several conferences by the RCNL, or the Regional Council of Negro Leadership. Such speakers and performers made appearances such as Mahalia Jackson and Thurgood Marshall. In the summer of 1962, Hamer was one of a small group of African Americans in her area who decided to register themselves. On August 31st, 1962, she traveled with 17 others to the county courthouse in Indianola to accomplish this goal. They encountered opposition from local and state law enforcement along the way. Such bravery came at a high price for Hamer. She was fired from her job and driven from the plantation she called her home for nearly 2 decades, just for registering to vote. But these actions only solidified Hamer's resolve to help other African Americans get the right to vote. According to the New York Times, she said, "They kicked me off the plantation, they set me free. It's the best thing that could happen. Now I can work for my people." Hamer dedicated her life to the fight for civil rights, working for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC. This organization was comprised mostly of African American students who engaged in acts of civil disobedience to fight racial segregation and injustice in the South. During the course of her activist career, Hamer was threatened, arrested, beaten, and shot at. She was severely injured in 1963 in a Winona, Mississippi jail. She and 2 other activists were taken in by police after attending a training workshop. Hamer was beaten so badly that she suffered permanent kidney damage. Along with her political activism, Hamer worked to help the poor and families in need in her Mississippi community. Hamer was one of the founders of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, which challenged the dominant force in Mississippi politics, the pro-segregation Democratic Party. In early 1964, Hamer ran for Congress as the MFDP candidate. She challenged veteran Congressman Jamie Whitten in the Democratic primary. Though Whitten won, Hamer's run set a precedent by challenging the established Mississippi congressional delegation and set the stage for the MFDP to have a national presence. The work of MFDP was one of the 1964 Mississippi Summer Project, or Freedom Summer, which brought hundreds of college students to the state to work for civil rights. Although SNCC organizers were wary of bringing in a group of outsiders, mostly whites from the North, Hamer saw value in an integrated movement and convinced many to abandon their objections, saying, quote, "If we're trying to break down the barrier of segregation, we can't segregate ourselves." The MFDP's goals was to persuade the convention's credentials committee to seat them as Mississippi representatives. President Lyndon Johnson, who needed Southern Democratic support in his bid for re-election, was determined to block them. When Hamer testified, she spoke from memory about her eviction from the Marlowe plantation and her brutal beating in the Winona jail. After less than 10 minutes, she concluded, "If the Freedom Democratic Party is not seated now, I question America. Is this America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off the hooks because our lives be threatened daily because we want to live as decent human beings in America?" As a conciliatory gesture, Democratic officials offered 2 at-large seats to MFDP representatives. The MFDP rejected the offer, and Hamer's voice was one of the loudest in opposition. "We didn't come all this way for no two seats. On March 14, 1977, at the age of 59, Fannie Lou Hamer died of complications of hypertension and breast cancer at Mountain Bayou Community Hospital in Mississippi. She was buried in her hometown of Ruleville, Mississippi. Her tombstone is engraved with one of her famous quotes, "I am sick and tired of being sick and tired."